So it's been a while since we posted a video on this 1961 VW Beetle, and looking at the footage that we had filmed, it's been a while since we filmed anything also, let alone edited and posted to YouTube. So there's been a lot of progress since the last time we filmed anything, and so I don't know how we're going to combine all of this, but there's going to be a big gap missing as far as progress. The last thing that was filmed, we had the glove box out and we were showing you the wiring behind the dash. Saw a comment by a guy the other day that was talking about having to remove the vehicle wiring harness, and he was alluding to, you've removed the engine, so you don't need the wiring that goes from the battery to the starter motor, or the wiring that goes from the ignition to the starting solenoid, that kind of thing. Well, yes, you can remove some wiring, but you don't have to remove the wiring harness. I mean, if you're working with a car that's really old and the harness has issues, well then yeah, you may want to replace the harness. But typically, when we're talking just a conversion, we don't touch the thing. It's not necessary, and it's probably not recommended. You're probably going to make more headaches for yourself than you're going to ever try to change. So, as we've mentioned in so many videos, we only attach to the vehicle chassis wiring in two respects. Okay, so your traction pack wiring, all your high voltage, high current stuff, that is a floating system. Doesn't connect to or have anything to do with the chassis wiring or your wiring harness at all. Then we have our 12 volt control circuits for the conversion. And again, the way that we do it, it's a separate system. It shares, the 12 volt battery from the vehicle, and it will share an ignition signal. That's it. We have our own separate fuse block. No fuses in it here right now, but this is the fuse block right here. And this is it on the front of this car. We just saw the rear component board mounted on the workbench there. That goes in the rear. That's it. We talked about those connections. The connections up here are the same in that we have two, I don't even say circuits. We connect to the chassis wiring. We connect directly, to the battery. We have unswitched 12 volts, and then we have ignition switch 12 volts. And the only way that we're affecting that is that we're pulling off a few milliamps to run the coil in a relay. So we have a relay right here, and we call that our power relay. And the coil in that relay is taking off from a 12 volt source that's ignition switched. And I don't know, it's this one right here. And so we just added that, and again, like I said, it's not creating any additional load on that circuit, but that's the only spot on a conversion that we actually connect to the chassis wiring. So what that power relay does is that takes a line directly from the battery, and when we have the ignition signal on the coil of that relay closes and it sends battery voltage to our fuse block. And then all of our circuits are fused totally separate from any of the wiring harness or anything that's in the vehicle. So we're not adding any loads to any existing circuits. We're not piggybacking on any existing circuits. One of the things that's common to do is if you have a vehicle that had an electric fuel pump, for instance. Well, once you remove the internal combustion engine, there's no need for an electric fuel pump. So that's removed also. But what we do is we'll take that, circuit in the original vehicle and have that be that ignition switched access point. We'll connect right there. Instead of it going to the fuel pump, it now turns on our power relay. It's that simple. So, yeah, don't make more work for yourself than you need to. Some people, they just tear everything apart and they're doing a conversion. It looks like the car was, ransacked or something. We have very, very little impact on the vehicle. We remove some items and we drill a few holes, and we do as few as possible. You can see one right here, this camera angle. Well, there's one here, and there's a big one here, and a little one there. There's one down here, another one. Those are existing holes, and we will use existing holes if we can. But we try to have an impact, minimal impact on the vehicle. So you could go back to bone stock and no one would be the wiser. Well, this is the component board, the rear component board for the 61 VW Beetle. If you've watched any of our video series on any of the VWs, especially the Things and the Beetles, you'll see they look similar, if not almost exact. Biggest difference on this one is that the 61 does not have any reverse lights, and so we don't have a reverse light relay like it would if it had reverse lights. And again, this is everything installed and connected except for the controller wiring harness and the items that attach to wiring in the vehicle that will run front to rear, so forth. So we have our coolant reservoir, our inverter, our throttle, the shunt, main contactor. We have some relays, KSI relay, KSI fuse, and a couple terminal strips. Now, when we install this in the vehicle, we will remove these side panels, and then this plate is bolted in the vehicle. It's bolted to the standoffs. It stands off from the firewall. And so to do that, we remove these two bolts, but first we remove these 8 wires, and those wires get tucked back, and then this comes off. So once this is installed in the vehicle, we'll tuck those wires back through the holes, bolt this in place, and then it's ready to be wired. So just an idea of what we're talking about here. The wiring harness, this is the main contactor, positive and negative. This is our shunt, and so that shunt lines run to the front of the vehicle to our instrumentation, so we'll connect to that. This is our throttle connections, which again go to the inverter wiring harness, so our throttle positive, negative, and signal. And this is our traction pack positive, which we're taking off here. and it goes to our, through the fuse, it goes to our relay and then to the KSI, because this inverter has a traction pack KSI input. The other side here we have ignition switch 12 volts, unswitched 12 volts. This is ignition switch 12 volts. That goes, this basically goes to the cooling system, fans, and pump. This is the 12 volt control from the inverter. Top of my head, I'm drawing a blank on this one at the moment. This is the KSI input to the controller, so that will go to the blue wire on the harness. This comes from our reverse switch under the dash in the front, and this is ground. So pretty simple, you know. We're going to hook up wires from the wiring harness will go to these, as well as a couple from, you know, that we run from the vehicle. And there will be a few wires from this that also go to the front. For instance, our brown wire for the economy mode, the red with blue, the 12 volt control, menu switch, that kind of thing. But anyway, it's ready to go in. Just thought I'd give you a quick glance of it outside of the vehicle. Like I said, remove the side panels, bolt it in. Only takes a second. So next what I'm going to do, we'll put this in the vehicle. We'll take our wiring harness, like we've shown you before. We'll select which wires we're going to use and which ones we won't, and then we'll plug it in and start routing our wiring and move forward. As you've heard me say also a lot of times, we're still waiting on some components, and so we're doing all that we can while we wait, and this is one of those things that we can do. So this will be installed in the vehicle. We'll run our traction pack wiring, we'll run all of our other wiring, have all that in place and done. Just waiting on these components, and then we can finish these and send them on their way. So anyway, this is the bug. It's not complete yet. We still have, you know, quite a few things to do. Battery box in the back there behind the seat. We'll allow the customer to make their own cover, maybe go with something that matches the upholstery would be nice, and cover that battery box. It's got nice looking upholstery in here. So if you look at the vehicle, it doesn't look, you know, any different than it did when it came in. If you get down real low, you'll notice it's missing the exhaust. That exhaust hung down really low. Refer to earlier videos for that. But yeah, otherwise this is just what it looked like. But there have been some changes, and first we'll take a look in the cab. The last video we posted, I believe, we were looking at the reverse switch, which is down here. It's the only thing that's been added that's, you know, in view. So it's just a protective cover. You pull the cover back, flip the switch, that's reverse, that's forward. So the dash hasn't been changed at all. But in the glove box, we have the instrumentation. This 12 volt power port was in the glove box originally, and in talking with the owner, he didn't even realize it was in there, but we decided to keep it. It was mounted in the glove box previously, like I said, but it wasn't wired. So now it actually works. So here's your instrumentation, and he can look at that, do whatever he wants, but he wanted it hidden in the glove box, and it is. Let's take a look under the bonnet at what it looks like now. So as I mentioned, it's not complete yet. We still have details to take care of and needs to be cleaned. There's finger marks on things. But the work that was in the, that we showed you previously has been covered. It's behind the dash. This is all stuff that was there originally. That's not our working. This is our working. This is the high voltage stuff. And then of course we have wiring that goes from a terminal strip that's on top of the glove box that goes over to our other component board that you saw previously. What's here now, of course, is the front battery box. This is our most positive. Comes out and goes to our main disconnect switch. We have our inertia switch. We've got our J1772 charge port and the 3.3 kilowatt charger. Let's go back and look at the the DC to DC converters underneath the back seat, which is what we do on our Beetle conversions. Again, this is not finished in the back here yet. Most obvious thing is that you don't see any of the cable boots, but you saw us working on this component board on the workbench. Here it is mounted in the car, everything wired. The last thing we do will be the cooling system, so that's not connected yet. The motor's in place, but it's only there as a placeholder so we could do our wire lengths, cut the panels, that kind of thing. We're waiting on the flywheels, and we're waiting on the flywheels. But so there's no coupler connected to this. There's no flywheel, no clutch. It's just the adapter mated to the motor and bolted to the bell housing with just the top two bolts. So it's just sitting in place so that we could do what we wanted to do while we waited. So everything is pretty much to that point, just some cosmetics and a few little tidbits left. Like I said, the cooling system, so forth. We still need to kind of loom a few things and that sort, but this will come out. And what we're actually doing on both the thing and the bug is we have some other projects. For instance, we have one that is, we've got a lot of the parts for it and everything, but it's been held up in the paint shop, and so since the vehicle is not available, we're stealing a couple flywheels from other projects and putting in these because we want these out of here, and we're getting frustrated waiting on the flywheels. Everything else is done, except for what the last little tidying up, but we will wait till the very end for that. So these have been both the thing, we'll have a video on the thing, but they both have been spun up and are working. And so we'll have an overview and test drive videos to follow. Just wanted to kind of show you what we've done and how this thing looks at this stage in the game. like I said, looks like it did when I got here. Doesn't look like we've done anything, but we have. And so that's the idea, is to have a conversion that doesn't adulterate the car. You can go back to bone stock and nobody would ever be the wiser. And like I've said so many times, everything's very modular. You can design these to where you open this up and it just looks like another little, storage, area or cavity. But personally, I don't like that. There's drawbacks to doing that. One is if you ever have to do troubleshooting or a replacement or anything like that. And the other is this type of setup is very it just displays in such a way that it gets DIY people excited, in my mind. Everybody views things differently. But we've kind of settled on this. We've done them where you can't see anything, and we've done them where you see everything. And this is kind of where we've ended up over the years. And we've been doing this longer than most, by far. We're going to be starting our 15th year. And we do this a certain way for a reason. And so some of it is an aesthetic thing, but that's secondary. The fact that the modularity, the ease in testing, the ease in replacement, that's on purpose. It's engineered that way. But aesthetically, I like it because it displays well. And what I mean by displays well is that I can show people the workings of this vehicle. And you can look at it and go, yes,